This boy was always isolated from other children his age. All day long he only liked to do a strange action, which was to dissect everything he saw. It was this unusual action of the boy that made the children and adults around him afraid. However, there was still one person who always loved and trusted the boy. That was his mother. The teacher advised Sewon's mother to take him to a psychologist. Listening to the teacher's advice, the boy's mother took him to a special treatment center. Although Sewon was very smart, he had almost no ability to communicate socially. The doctor concluded that Sewon had autism. To treat this disease, his mother had to pay 1 million won every month. This was a huge amount that her family could not afford. After that, she could only sadly take her son back home. At this moment, a truck suddenly rushed towards her and hit her. Sewon stood there emotionlessly watching his mother lying in a pool of blood. Immediately after that, the boy fainted. Sewon's case was referred to a leading neurology professor. Sewon witnessed his mother's death, but he had no emotions. The professor was interested in the boy's special brain structure. The distance between the hippocampus and the amygdala was too far. This gave Sewon an excellent memory, but the boy could not express his emotions. The professor visited Sewon in person. He wanted to hear the boy tell about the accident. Sewon remembered the car that hit his mother. He could even remember the license plate number or the clothes the driver was wearing, even if he only saw them. Before his mother passed away, he heard her call his name for the last time. Everyone in the room was amazed by this boy's extraordinary memory. At the same time, they also felt a little scared. The professor wanted to learn more about Sewon's brain, so he performed many experiments on the boy. Time passed quickly. Sewon is now a famous scientist. He specializes in researching the human nervous system and brain. Sewon's research topic this time is brainwave synchronization. He believes that if two people can synchronize their brainwaves, it is possible to see each other's memories and thoughts. The purpose of this is to help patients with brain problems. However, Sewon's research has encountered numerous objections from experts. Reading other people's thoughts and memories will have many unpredictable consequences. Sewon is also aware of this, so he needs more time to prove that his experiment is good. After the lecture ended, Sewon stood alone at the party. A young journalist approached him for an interview. The journalist wanted to know his personal motivation behind his research. However, Sewon refused to share. For him, research is the only joy. Actually, before coming to interview, this journalist had learned about Sewon's family background. She knew that one's mother had died in an accident and that recently his wife and son had also encountered unfortunate events. Sewon did not want to continue the conversation, so he turned around and left. Instead of returning home, he chose to continue to the research room to work. The experimental subjects this time were two mice, black and white. Sewon began to synchronize the memories of the two mice. However, the experiment failed when both mice died. Sewon dejectedly recorded the results on a tape recorder. Then he continued to the office. Sewon's colleagues wanted to invite him to dinner, but he just coldly refused. Everyone thought Sewon was an eccentric person with no emotions. Every day after work, Sewon liked to go to a Japanese restaurant to enjoy dinner alone. The sky suddenly poured heavy rain. A fierce thunder and lightning lit up the large house. Sewon looked sadly at his son's room and thought back to the days when he had a happy home. Although Sewon couldn't express his emotions, he still felt like he was living like any other normal person. However, an incident happened. The cat that his family raised broke his prize. He coldly told his wife to throw the cat away, but his wife stopped him and said that the cat was their son's only friend. It turned out that Sewon's son was also autism spectrum like him. This was the reason why the two always argued. The wife wanted her son to develop like any other child. Sewon wanted his son to live the same childhood that he had experienced. Then the unthinkable happened. His son died in a fire. This made his wife despair. She refused to accept that her son was gone. This made Sewon feel uncomfortable. He wanted his wife to accept the fact that their child had passed away forever in that fire. His cold words made his wife extremely hurt. In the end, what he did not want the most happened. His wife did something foolish, and he could not protect his only family. In order to forget the reality, Sewon focused on crazy experiments. He carefully checked each brainwave of the two mice. Just as he was about to turn off the machine, a strong connection signal was transmitted. The brains of the two mice were synchronized. Sewon put Black in a maze. Although this was his first time here, Black quickly found the shortest way out. This way out was taught to White by Sewon before. Sewon happily recorded the results. In order to speed up the experiment, he asked his superiors for a newly deceased body. However, his superiors refused. She thought that what he was doing was too risky and he couldn't let himself become a test subject. But he was still determined with his thoughts, so he went to find his close assistant. He wanted the assistant to find him a new, high-quality body sample. As long as the experiment was successful, Sewon could apply it to humans. The assistant tried to stop Sewon because it was too dangerous. He insisted insisted that he wouldn't help Sewon, but in front of Sewon's sincere eyes, the assistant finally agreed to help him. That night, the two of them sneaked into the morgue. However, the guard caught Sewon with tools. Luckily, the assistant stepped in and helped Sewon get into the morgue. The two of them quickly got to work. The assistant pushed the new body into the morgue, while Sewon prepared the machines. They coordinated very professionally. Every movement required absolute precision. After everything was ready, Sewon put the device connected to his head. The assistant anxiously started the machine. The machine started to speed up, and Sewon gradually fell asleep. A strange scene appeared before his eyes. The sky was pouring rain. There were many trees around. Suddenly, a rock appeared in front of him and continuously hit his face. Blood started to spurt out. His heart rate dropped to 0. The assistant was scared and quickly performed CPR. Fortunately, the assistant finally woke Sewon up. Sewon tried to calm down and looked at the corpse next to him. He had just experienced the feeling of the corpse before death. The experiment ended. On the way back home, Sewon thought a lot. He kept thinking about the scene he had just experienced. After saying goodbye to the assistant, when he got home, he was surprised to find a stranger standing in front of the door. Sewon was alert and asked who that person was. The stranger took out a business card and introduced himself as Detective Kang Mu. Sewon was surprised to hear that the detective had come to find him. Detective Kang Mu asked Sewon if he knew Yuki, but this was the first time Sewon had heard that name. Just as Sewon was about to leave, Kang Mu said, "I want to hear about your wife." It was Yuki who hired Kang Mu to investigate her. This made Sewon feel uncomfortable. He warned Kang Mu to leave before he called the police. After Sewon chased Kang Mu away, he felt a severe headache. Then he started to feel dizzy. His whole body seemed to have lost its strength. He tried to go into the house. Images of his mother from the past appeared in his mind. The image of a murderer also appeared in his mind. Suddenly, he woke up with a start. At this moment, two people from the police station came to investigate him. They came to talk about Sewon's wife. The two of them carefully looked around the house. There were many certificates of merit of Sewon in the house. A female inspector asked Sewon if he knew someone named Yuki. Sewon was surprised when she asked him about this. The female inspector came in front of him and said that Yuki was someone close to his wife. They found Yuki's body yesterday, so they suspected Sewon was the culprit. Being accused without reason made Sewon feel uncomfortable. Now he was the suspect in the case. Because Sewon wanted to find out about this person named Yuki, he contacted the guard guarding the morgue. He wanted to connect with Yuki to read his memories. The guard let Sewon in there for an hour. He quickly pulled out his device and went to the end of the hallway. Then he opened the door. The atmosphere became increasingly gloomy. Sewon found the locker containing Yuki's body. Then he started to connect his brain, and then he gradually sank into Yuki's memories. A ray of light appeared before his eyes. This was the memory of Yuki when he was alive. He also had a happy family like Sewon. However, tragedy struck. A stranger attacked and killed Yuki. After Sewon returned to the research room, he recorded the results of this connection, but he still could not remember Yuki's memories. This was a big question that Sewon needed to find an answer to. After finishing work for the day, Sewon took the initiative to invite everyone to eat. This surprised the whole room. They wondered why someone like Sewon invited them to eat. Even the familiar chef felt strange. This was the first time Sewon brought his friends here. Besides, Sewon also ordered drinks. Sewon's mood was also different from before. He was friendlier with everyone. Meanwhile, at the police station, the female inspector was investigating Sewon's information. She also looked into the case that took his son's life. She thought that Sewon's wife had an affair with Yuki. Out of jealousy, Sewon killed his wife's lover. After dinner, Sewon returned to the office. Only now did he realize that he had strange signs, from being left-handed to liking to drink coffee. These were things he had never done before. He quickly wrote down his characteristics on the board. His colleagues were also surprised when they saw Sewon's changes. Suddenly, the lights in the room went out. Sewon saw a shadow opposite him. He thought it was his colleague, but it wasn't. Sewon asked who was standing there. Just as he was about to turn on the light, a dark shadow ran in front of him and disappeared. Sewon thought he was hallucinating because he was too tired. He calmly walked down to the basement to get his car. At this time, he also saw a dark shadow, but it disappeared immediately. Strange things kept happening after Sewon synchronized his brain with the deceased. On the way home, he saw a figure with a bloody face. He tried to ignore it, but he saw another one sitting in the back of his car. At this point, his mind started to panic. He wondered what was going on. Sewon continued driving in extreme confusion. A severe headache came. This was the result of synchronizing his brain with the deceased. Sewon tried to pull the car over, but the hallucinations got stronger. He saw many cockroaches crawling on his body. Then a giant monster was coming towards him. Sewon calmly reassured himself that this was just an illusion caused by a brain conflict. Suddenly, Suddenly, a little girl appeared before his eyes. She said that his son was still alive. This surprised Sewon. He returned home in a tired state. The little girl said the same things that his wife had said. He wondered if his wife's words were true. He went down to the basement, where he was trying to treat his wife. There was only one way to know the truth, so he decided to synchronize his brainwaves with his wife to find the answer. Then he felt like he was back to the most beautiful time of his life. That was when his wife and son were always by his side. Suddenly, Sewon's expression changed when he saw his son running outside. He tried to call his wife, but no one responded. Just as he was about to chase after his son, his wife stopped him. His wife blamed him for not listening to her. He shouted loudly when he saw his son running outside, but his wife only coldly replied that the baby would be safer if he stayed away from him. He was shocked when he saw his wife having a seizure. Then his wife slowly sank into a sea of blood. He was left standing alone in the red room. Suddenly, his wife slowly emerged from the sea of blood. She seemed to be crying and begging for something. He gently approached his wife and asked her. His wife painfully begged him to find their son. He woke up with a start. His wife was having violent convulsions beside him. Sewon quickly turned off the synchronization machine. Then he injected his wife with a sedative. Thanks to that, his wife's health gradually stabilized. Sewon began to record the results of the last synchronization. He had accessed his wife's most secret memories. It reflected her psychology. However, because these were brainwaves of a living person, the connection was not stable. It was also dangerous for the living. Therefore, he decided not to perform this experiment on a living person again. He promised his wife that he would find their son in another way. A new day began. Sewon was awakened by the phone ringing. Today, he decided to stay home and monitor his wife. At this moment, the female inspector appeared. She tried to investigate Sewon's wife. However, Sewon did not want to reveal his family affairs to others. The female inspector expressed her suspicions. She thought that Sewon knew about his wife's affair with someone else, so he took revenge on the two of them. Sewon understood that no matter how he explained, they would still be suspicious, so he directly took the two of them to the basement. The female inspector was surprised when she saw that Sewon's wife was being taken care of in the best conditions. However, Sewon was still not free from their suspicions. Then he watched the female inspector leave. Then he went to find the lawyer's business card. When he went downstairs, he saw the silhouette of a child running past. He carefully walked over and realized that it was a little girl. She was chasing the cat. Sewon hurriedly ran out into the yard. At this moment, an illusion appeared, or rather, he was seeing his wife's memories. She was very close to the child following Yuki was his daughter. Sewon quickly wrote down the information he had. To find his son, he needed to find the girl. That night, he made an appointment to meet Kangmu to talk. Sewon wanted to know why Yuki was investigating him. Kangmu laughed when he learned that his client was dead. He questioned whether Sewon was the culprit. However, Sewon denied it. Before meeting Kangmu, he knew nothing about Yuki. Sewon wanted to find out all the information about Yuki, so he hired Kangmu. Kangmu informed him that Sewon's wife and Yuki met at the hospital. This place was for autistic children. At that moment, Sewon had a headache. He saw a little girl with Yuki and his wife. He realized that they just met there by chance. A moment later, the doctor brought Sewon's son into the room. He had clearly asked his wife not to bring their child to this place. Kangmu laughed and commented that it seemed like Sewon's wife had disobeyed him. Sewon asked where the girl was. This surprised Kangmu. Sewon clearly did not know Yuki, but he knew Yuki's daughter. However, Kangmu did not know where the girl was either. He asked why Sewon wanted to find her. Sewon explained that she might have a clue about his son. Kangmu knew everything about Sewon. Kangmu then took Sewon to Yuki's house. On the way, Kangmu asked Sewon if he felt regretful. He was sad every time he mentioned his small family. The two then arrived at a locked house. Kangmu carefully observed the surroundings and entered. He wanted to enter through the window, but Sewon had unlocked the main door. Kangmu was surprised to see that Sewon knew the password to this house. The two entered the house. Sewon saw many drawings hanging on the wall. He carefully entered the small room to check. Suddenly, a stranger appeared and attacked Sewon. He was scared and fell to the ground. It turned out that it was Yuki's remaining memory. That stranger was the one who killed Yuki. Kangmu helped Sewon up. After Sewon calmed down, he told him about his experiment. In that experiment, he synchronized his brain with Yuki. That's why he knew Yuki's house password. However, Kangmu couldn't believe such nonsense. He said that if what Sewon said was true, why were they still here? Sewon said that the experiment wasn't completely successful and he couldn't see all the memories because they wanted to find out more about what happened. They entered the girl's room. Sewon discovered many strange drawings on the wall. This was a sign that the girl was also autism spectrum like him. Moreover, the girl was a genius. He sat down and looked at the pictures carefully. Suddenly, Suddenly, a piece of memory appeared. He saw his wife giving the cat to the girl to take care of. His wife seemed sad because their son had just passed away. The girl honestly said that she had seen their son. This surprised Se-won's wife. He immediately looked under the bed. There the girl had kept a secret box. Inside the box were her toys and a letter. On the letter was also written the address of her grandmother. After discovering a new clue, the two went out to the garden. Here Se-won saw a trail of blood. Kang-moo also noticed something strange. He followed the trail and saw a killed cat. Se-won realized that it was the cat he had raised before. A bold idea popped into Se-won's mind. He wanted to synchronize his brain with the cat to find out the truth. Kang-moo thought Se-won was crazy. They quickly drove back to the lab. Since the lab did not allow outsiders, Se-won told Kang-moo to go home first. He would call back when he had new information. Kang-moo then made an appointment to meet Se-won tomorrow. Se-won immediately brought the cat's body into the office. He carefully prepared the device and attached it to the cat's head. Then he performed the synchronization process. Through the cat's perspective, Se-won saw his wife and son. They were happily playing together. Suddenly, the assassin and his subordinates appeared. After killing Yuki, they immediately drove away. At the same time, the female inspector and the forensic doctor were examining Yuki's body. The forensic doctor showed that the victim had many dangerous wounds. To cause these wounds, the assassin must have been very professional. He must have been able to use a knife accurately. Each knife slash could have killed the victim instantly. The forensics then pointed out a hole in the head of the body. It was made recently. The female inspector immediately checked the security camera. Just as she predicted, Se-won appeared here. All the evidence pointed to Se-won. Meanwhile, the real perpetrators were still living freely. They calmly drove to the convenience store to shop. One of them bought a lot of knives and tape. Then they went to the girl's grandmother's house. The loud noise outside woke Yuki's daughter up. When she opened the door, she saw two strangers holding her grandmother. The killer immediately grabbed her and left. A new day began. As soon as the assistant arrived at the lab, he was shocked to see Se-won lying on the ground. Se-won was wearing a brain synchronization device on his head. The assistant guessed that he had synchronized his brain with the cat. Se-won immediately drove to the girl's grandmother's address. On the way, he recorded the results of the brain sync with the dead cat. When Se-won arrived, he saw many police cars surrounding the house. Se-won had a bad feeling, so he went to check. He discovered that a murder had happened here last night. However, the police still hadn't found the girl. Everything just turned Se-won into the prime suspect. Now he didn't know what to do. When he was returning to the car, a ball suddenly flew towards him. His body reacted, and his hand caught the ball. Only then did Se-won realize that the color in his eyes had changed. Rather, this was the vision of a cat. Se-won had the ability to see things clearly at a distance. Now Se-won had the characteristics of a cat. Suddenly, a memory of the cat appeared in his mind. Se-won immediately recorded the license plate number of the car that had left that night. He called the female inspector and asked her to look up the license plate number. The female inspector was surprised that Se-won already knew about Yuki's daughter's disappearance. Se-won said that he could help her find her. After some hesitation, the female inspector decided to put her trust in Se-won. However, the information the female inspector found shocked her. The license plate number belonged to Kang-moo. That night, Se-won drove back home. He felt that something strange was going on. At that moment, the female inspector called and informed him that the license plate number belonged to Kang-moo, but that Kang-moo had died 4 days ago. He died even before Yuki went missing. Se-won was surprised when she heard this news, because yesterday he was still talking with Kang-moo. Suddenly, Se-won hung up. Outside, he heard someone trying to open the door. He loudly asked who was outside. The person outside replied that he was Detective Kang-moo. Se-won calmly walked to the door. Then he carefully opened the door. Outside, Kang-moo was standing opposite Se-won. He calmly recounted what he saw to Kang-moo. On the night Yuki died, he saw a car parked outside. The license plate number was Kang-moo's. Kang-moo felt uncomfortable when Se-won didn't believe him, because he clearly wasn't at the scene that night. Se-won said that Kang-moo's car was destroyed, and Kang-moo was dead. Kang-moo laughed and asked Se-won if he was joking. He was clearly still alive and sitting here. Se-won carefully explained to Kang-moo that perhaps he appeared here because Se-won had synchronized his brain with Yuki. Se-won's determination to solve the case pulled Kang-moo out of Yuki's memory. Kang-moo couldn't accept this absurd truth. Kang-moo asked Se-won to think carefully about who he met first. Only then did Se-won remember that before he synchronized his brain with Yuki, he had also synchronized his brain with someone else. Se-won then drove Kang-moo to the morgue in the hospital. He carefully opened the white curtain, and the body on the table was Kang-moo. Kang-moo was shocked when he realized he was dead. His face was completely disfigured. Se-won said that instead of seeing Kang-moo's memories, he saw Kang-moo as a living person. Kang-moo guessed that he might have been absorbed into Sewon's brain. Faced with such unexpected truths, Kangmu burst out laughing and wondered who he was. After calming down, Kangmu asked Sewon if he felt strange. Why was Sewon's first brain synchronized with Kangmu coincidentally? It was obvious that he had investigated Sewon and was related to Yuki. Sewon immediately called his assistant and wondered about the origin of the body that day. The assistant replied that he just picked randomly. Sewon asked the assistant to meet, but the assistant said he was busy. The whole conversation was overheard by someone else. Kangmu couldn't sit still and wait any longer. Just as Kangmu was about to leave, Sewon asked Kangmu if he remembered anything about the accident. Kangmu showed Sewon the way to the accident site. As soon as he arrived, Kangmu quickly checked the crime scene. Seeing the place where he died, he felt depressed. The two decided to go downstairs to check. There were still traces of the crime there. At that moment, Sewon had a headache. He saw Kangmu's memories. It was raining heavily that day. Kangmu drove to meet Yuki. Then he discovered that a car was following him. To lose them, Kangmu stepped on the gas and accelerated. Then he overtook the truck. Then he quickly drove down to a grassy area on the side of the road. Kangmu calmly watched the car that was following him leave. Then he restarted the car to leave in another direction. He thought he had successfully lost the tail of the stalkers, but they once again came back to find him. Then they hit the back of his car hard. The car lost control and fell straight into the abyss. Due to inertia, Kangmu was thrown out. After Sewon learned the truth, he told everything to Kangmu. Kangmu was surprised and asked if he saw the killer's face. Sewon recalled Kangmu's last memories. After falling into the abyss, Kangmu was still alive, but the killer and his subordinates did not let Kangmu off easily. They went down to check on Kangmu and beat him to death with rocks. After that, Sewon and Kangmu went to a restaurant. Suddenly, Sewon saw a very familiar face. This person was the one who killed Detective Kangmu. To confirm his identity, Sewon approached. At this moment, the assassin appeared behind Sewon. He greeted Sewon. As soon as Sewon turned around, his subordinate grabbed Sewon's neck. He pulled out a gun and threatened Sewon to follow him. They wanted to capture Sewon to kill him and cover up the clues. Only Sewon saw Kangmu. Kangmu warned that if Sewon followed them, the only outcome would be death. As soon as a crowd passed by, Sewon threw the food from their hands and ran away. However, he ran into a dead end. Assassin and his subordinate were angry and immediately chased after him. Then the assassin pulled out a weapon and rushed straight at Sewon. At this moment, the cat's vision was activated. Sewon could see every movement of the assassin. Then he used all his strength to knock the assassin down. The subordinate pulled out a gun and shot Sewon. However, Sewon now had the agile movements of a cat. Therefore, he avoided the incoming bullets. Then Sewon launched a blow to knock out the subordinate. They were surprised to see that Sewon was so strong. Kangmu advised Sewon to run away instead of continuing to fight. Listening to Kangmu, Sewon accelerated and ran away. At that moment, the female inspector appeared. She shouted loudly, ordering Sewon to raise his hands and surrender. Suddenly, the subordinate behind raised his gun and pointed it at Sewon. The female inspector immediately pulled Sewon into a corner to avoid the bullets. After that, the gunfight took place fiercely. The subordinate confidently stepped forward, but in the end, he was shot down by the female inspector on the spot. The assassin felt that the situation was not good, so he immediately fled. The female inspector hurriedly chased after the assassin. In order to escape, he jumped from a high floor. When the female inspector returned, she asked Sewon why they wanted to kill him. He also did not know their true purpose. Then he got in the car with the female inspector and left. In the car, he asked to take his subordinate to the lab. However, the female inspector did not believe what he said. She just wanted to take Sewon to the police station to get a statement. On the way, Sewon said that the two people were the ones who killed Kangmu. If his hypothesis was correct, they were also the ones who kidnapped Yuki. The female inspector was surprised when she saw Sewon talking to himself. She thought he had a mental problem. As soon as he was escorted to the police station, they attached a lie detector to him. The expert started asking yes or no questions. As a result, Sewon's words were true. However, when the expert asked him if he knew Yuki, the machine detected that he was lying. In fact, Sewon did not know the person named Yuki. He only knew Yuki through the memories of his wife and Kangmu. The memories were synchronized, causing the machine to think he was lying. Seeing that things were getting complicated, Sewon asked to stop the interrogation. Before being taken away, he told everything to the female inspector. However, she did not believe him. Sewon asked if she was looking for Yuki's daughter. He also said that their time was running out, but she only ordered her subordinates to take Sewon away. During the break, the female inspector saw her colleague's daughter. She began to worry about the safety of Yuki's daughter. Now the police had no clue about her. After thinking carefully, the female inspector went to see Sewon and asked why he wanted to find Yuki's daughter so much? Sewon answered honestly that only she knew where his son was. Finally, the female inspector agreed to let him carry out the brain synchronization plan. He installed the synchronization device in his subordinate's head. The female inspector felt a little worried. She held her breath waiting for the results. Then Sewon gradually sank into his memories. He saw all the crimes he had committed. His mission this time was to kidnap Yuki and Kangmu. After completing the mission, he went to see a man wearing glasses. This man was the secretary who worked at the same place as Sewon. He asked them to kill Yuki's daughter, but the subordinate disobeyed because he could not kill a child, so he gave the child to his girlfriend to take care of. Finally, Sewon woke up. He told the female inspector that the girl was in a tea house, and he thought he knew that tea house. They immediately set off. Suddenly, Sewon had a headache. Sewon saw the remaining memories of the killer. Based on the memories they had found to the tea house, he asked to find someone, but the owner was alert when she saw the female inspector standing behind. The female inspector noticed smoke coming from the room, so she immediately rushed in to check. Wanting to negotiate, the boss agreed to reveal information. At this moment, the subordinate's girlfriend returned. The female inspector coldly asked her where she was, but the girlfriend replied that she hadn't seen him for a long time. The female inspector informed her that the subordinate was dead, and if she didn't want to go to jail, she should reveal everything. The girlfriend was scared and said that the girl had run away. Then they went to check the girlfriend's house. Just as she said, the girl had run away. Sewon saw a mountain range behind the house, and he was sure that the girl was on this mountain. A large-scale search was conducted, but the police still hadn't found the girl. When it started to get dark, Sewon relied on his cat's eyesight to search. The entire police were ordered to stop by the female inspector. They were amazed to see Sewon easily climb up a tall tree. He quickly observed everything around him. Suddenly, he saw a small movement. Sewon and the police immediately ran down that direction. When they were near the place, Sewon signaled the police to stop. He went to the alley alone. Just as he thought, the girl was hiding there. He gently called her name and introduced himself. After receiving her consent, he picked her up. Everyone quickly ran to check her health. Only then did the female inspector have a different view of him. After that, the girl was taken to the intensive care unit. However, the girl still refused to say anything. Sewon knew that she had the same disease as him, so he went to talk to her. He asked her where she last saw his son. Instead of forcing her to say it, he asked her to draw it. Then he carefully observed every stroke of her drawing. It was a reflection of a woman and her son. At the same time at the research institute, the assistant felt that he was about to be exposed, so he packed his things and left quickly. But his superior stopped him. She informed him that the secretary wanted to talk to him. The assistant wondered why the secretary wanted to find him. Feeling that something was wrong, he immediately drove away. Then, he returned to his mother's house in a worried manner. Someone was watching in front of their house. Back at the hospital, Sewon brought the painting to the female inspector. However, the female inspector thought that the girl was imagining it, but Sewon still insisted that she had really seen it. Sewon understood autistic children very well, so he asked the female inspector to open an investigation. The female inspector said that the police had found the body of a boy in the fire. Sewon took the painting in disappointment and left. The female inspector gave him a piece of advice that if he wanted to find his son, he had to ensure his own safety first. The female inspector then personally drove Sewon home. The female inspector informed him that she had arranged for someone to stand guard outside his house. Before leaving, he wanted to ask the female inspector to investigate the assistant. They were supposed to meet at the mall yesterday, and he suspected that the assistant knew something about the case. The female inspector had promised to check all the suspects. At this time, the secretary had also ordered the assassin to find and kill the assistant. Right now, the assistant was their weak point. Sewon was by his wife's side every day. He held his wife's hand tightly and prayed. He didn't know how to find his son anymore. At that moment, Kangmu appeared. Kangmu noticed that Sewon was very strange. It was normal for the investigation to be at a standstill. What he needed to do now was to simplify and rearrange everything. Sewon seemed to wake up to Kangmu's advice. Kangmu asked when was the last time Sewon saw his son. He didn't know where to go because the police were watching him outside. At that moment, the maid came. He suddenly thought of a plan. He asked the maid to bring food to the police. While the police were distracted, Sewon drove away. The police immediately called the female inspector to report. The female inspector ordered her subordinates to protect Sewon if there was any danger. Even the police didn't understand what Sewon wanted to do. He drove like crazy and then made a turn to completely lose the police. The place Sewon wanted to go was the resort that his whole family had planned to go to. However, he had something urgent to do. This made his wife feel sad. She wanted him to go out with their son, but he refused. He was the one who always prioritized work over family. Only now did he understand his wife's loneliness. Meanwhile, at the police station's research institute, Se-won's superior was being questioned. He wanted to know if Se-won had been acting unusually recently. However, Se-won's superior did not notice anything unusual about him. The police asked to see Se-won's file. Se-won's superior contacted his mother, but she did not know anything. This made the police even more suspicious. At this time, Se-won finally arrived at the vacation house in the woods. It had burned down in a fire. Se-won's son had died in the fire. Se-won mustered up all his courage and walked towards the house. Based on Yuki's memories, Se-won saw his wife and son having a good time. He carefully checked every corner of the house, but all that remained was a pile of ashes. He looked at the two children playing happily on the swing. This made his heart ache. All of Yuki's memories were like a slow-motion movie. He realized that Yuki had feelings for his wife. For the first time, he heard his wife's heartfelt words. She felt sad when Se-won didn't care about her feelings. At this moment, Kangmu appeared and interrupted Se-won's train of thought. He realized that he was bad. He felt that his wife and child were more like a happy family with that man. Kangmu advised Se-won not to think too much. Suddenly, Se-won saw the microwave explode. That was also the starting point of the fire. The fire quickly spread and burned down the entire house. Standing in front of the small room, Se-won realized that something was wrong. Meanwhile, at Se-won's house, the secretary broke into the basement. He carefully walked over to check on Se-won's wife's condition. After he confirmed that she was still in a coma, he coldly pulled out the breathing tube to kill her. Just as he was about to leave, the mastermind ordered him to stop. He absolutely must not leave any clues. After receiving the order, the secretary quickly reattached the breathing tube to Se-won's wife. Then he drove away. At this moment, the police returned. They passed each other without knowing. Meanwhile, the assassin had also killed the assistant's mother. The assistant had fled long ago. It was starting to get dark. Se-won had lit a fire. Memories of the terrible fire appeared in his mind. That night, the subordinate broke into this house. He carefully broke the lock without making any noise. As soon as he entered the house, he closed all the doors. Suddenly, he was startled by the sound of a cat meowing. He then quickly threw the cat out, but the loud noise woke Se-won's wife. The wife saw the cat run out, so she went out to look for it. The subordinate took the opportunity to sneak into her son's room. The boy was sleeping soundly. The subordinate immediately took out the sleeping pills to make the boy faint. At this moment, the boy woke up. Before the boy could scream, the subordinate managed to make the boy faint. A moment later, the killer appeared. He had prepared another body to replace the boy. Then they poured gasoline all over the house to create a fake scene. The explosion started from the microwave. The fire quickly spread throughout the house. As soon as the mother returned, the whole house had exploded and burned fiercely. The mother panicked and ran to find her son, but the fierce fire stopped her. She could only cry and scream in pain. The killers quickly drove away before the police arrived. Their mission was to capture the child alive. By now, Se-won had learned the truth that his son was still alive. He wanted to prove what he saw was true. So, he brought his tools to his son's grave. He had buried his son himself before. At this moment, Kangmu appeared and asked Se-won why he was filming. Se-won replied that he would use the tape as evidence to prove that the child in the grave was not his son. He quickly started digging. After a while of effort, Se-won finally reached the coffin. He carefully checked the camera again, and then he started to pry open the coffin lid. Because the body was almost completely destroyed in the fire, Se-won had to use a drill to take samples from deep within the bones. Kangmu frowned as he watched Se-won work. After taking the sample, he quickly brought it back home. At the same time, at the house of the female inspector's assistant, they discovered a shadow inside. They immediately opened the door and rushed in. The teammate discovered an unlocked door. They had a bad feeling. The two carefully investigated the surroundings. At this moment, the mother came out. The female inspector noticed a wound on her face. The female inspector immediately sensed something was wrong, so she quickly guessed that the killer was controlling the mother. She quickly typed a message into her phone. Then she showed it to the mother. The message said that when she counted to 3, she should step aside. She immediately understood what the female inspector meant. The female inspector started counting down. As soon as she counted to 3, the killer quickly ran away. The female inspector pulled out her gun and immediately chased after him. However, the killer escaped again. The police quickly sealed off the scene. They knew why the killer attacked the assistant's mother. He wanted to use her to lure the assistant out. The police had discovered the assistant's most recent location. It seemed that he was hiding in a temple in another province. At this moment, she received a message that Se-won had returned home. Se-won carefully observed the surroundings. Then he went into the office. He would personally conduct the test. After Se-won got the final results from the sample he had taken, he went to his wife's side. What his wife thought was right. If he had trusted his wife, things might not have come to this. Siwon burst into tears and held his wife's hand. After calming down, he remembered the child they had brought. That child had a long scar on his head. Siwon immediately looked up information about that child and realized that the scar was caused by a disease. There was a high possibility that the child had autism. Siwon remembered the research center in Yuki's memory. His wife had brought their son there. Siwon immediately called the female inspector, but at that time, the female inspector was going south to find the assistant, so Siwon had to act alone. As soon as Siwon's car left, the police immediately followed. However, they were easily lost by Siwon. He went to the research center. There were many people bringing their children here. Siwon went to the reception desk and asked to speak to the doctor to examine his son. The receptionist deliberately delayed the time to inform his superiors. While waiting, Siwon saw a butterfly in a girl's drawing. It turned out that the girl had seen his son with the doctor. Siwon immediately understood the situation. They must be hiding his son here. He looked at the reception desk and then quickly left. When the receptionist found out Siwon had disappeared, he went straight to the doctor's room and opened the door. The female doctor tried to hide the photo on the table and then calmly welcomed Siwon. The female doctor said that she always wanted to see him. He asked to see his son's medical record. The female doctor used the excuse of needing to open the medical record to text her superiors. Siwon coldly looked straight into the doctor's eyes. Seeing that the female doctor seemed unwell, he immediately went to the desk. The female doctor informed him that his son's records had not been entered into the system yet. Then, she made an excuse to go out to check. In fact, she wanted to call to ask for instructions from her superiors. At this moment, Siwon realized that this female doctor was the one who appeared in his wife's memory. He quickly searched for information about his son's medical records, but he couldn't find anything. At this moment, he discovered that the photo was hidden. It was a group photo of doctors. Siwon was surprised to see that the photo included the professor and the assistant. These were all people he knew. At this moment, the female doctor led people back. They wanted to capture Siwon, but there was no one inside the room. The female doctor ordered people to search the emergency stairs. Then she discovered that the photo was in the wrong place. So she knew that Siwon had seen that photo. They had to find Siwon quickly. The female doctor saw that the balcony door was open, so she quickly ran out to check. She was surprised to see Siwon clinging to the wall. She angrily called someone to arrest him. They tried to pull him in but failed. At this time, with the cat's superpower, Siwon jumped down and landed safely. Meanwhile, at the Southern Temple, the female inspector was also there. Her target was the assistant. At this time, the assistant was sitting and chanting Buddha's name, but his mind was always uneasy. He did not expect that the assassin had also come here. He slowly walked towards a temple. This police officer also discovered something unusual and decided to follow the assassin to check. The place the assassin went to was the guest house. He quickly forced the assistant into a corner. Just as the assassin was about to attack, the police appeared and stopped him. The assassin angrily pointed his gun at the policeman. Luckily, he was able to dodge the incoming bullets. Then he quickly rushed forward and approached the assassin. Taking advantage of the two people fighting, the assistant quickly ran away. The assassin angrily kicked the policeman away. Then he shot straight at the assistant. He was about to kill the assistant when he was stopped again by the policeman. The policeman hugged the assassin tightly, and a fierce fight broke out. The assassin pulled out the prepared knife and stabbed the policeman. The deep wound made the policeman weak. The assassin pressed the policeman to the ground and tried to stab him to death. The policeman held the knife tightly in his hand. At this moment, a boy came over. The assassin told the policeman to scream, but to protect civilians, the policeman chose to remain silent. Then the policeman was exhausted from blood loss. At this time, the female inspector found the assistant. When she arrived, the policeman was killed. At the same time, Siwon drove to the professor's villa. The camera recognized him and the door opened automatically. Siwon calmly walked inside. He was very familiar with this road. After his mother died, it was the professor who adopted him. Everything here remained unchanged after so many years. Memories from the past flooded his mind. He walked into the room where he used to live. Here he was trained in everything related to research. Even the professor was surprised by his ability, especially the idea of linking the brains of two people. The professor brought Siwon's idea to call for investment, and a famous company in the US agreed to sponsor this project. However, Siwon refused because he knew that the sponsor was not interested in science. They just wanted to take advantage of his research for their own purposes. From then on, Siwon realized that the professor had changed. He only wanted to trade everything for fame and money. Back in reality, the professor appeared. Next to him was the secretary. Through the young murderer's memories, Siwon recognized him. The secretary was the one who directly ordered the subordinate. This meant that the professor was the ultimate mastermind. Siwon did not hide his his purpose in coming here. He angrily asked where his son was. The professor laughed when he knew that Siwon had discovered the truth. He was curious about how Siwon expressed the feelings, but Siwon had no time to joke around. He urgently asked where his son was. The secretary said that he went out to get something. Now there were only 2 people left. The professor advised Siwon to make the right choice. He began to tell his life story. In his life, he had 3 great opportunities. The first chance was that he met Siwon. The second chance was that he was able to go to America. At that time, although Siwon objected to receiving funding, the professor still sent people to America to do research. This research was secret. Therefore, the research team needed living people to participate in the experiment. Meanwhile, at the police station, the female inspector stood angrily in front of the assistant. A police officer close to her had just died. At the same time, she said that the assistant's mother had also been assassinated by the assassin. The assistant burst into tears when thinking about his mother, so he finally told the whole story. At that time, he was sent to America by the professor. Their mission was to research brain synchronization. All the participants in the experiment suffered severe consequences. Their memories disappeared and their minds were unstable. They lived in great pain. The experimental subjects failed repeatedly. However, the professor's team was still haunted by this project. That's when the assistant realized how crazy things were. Then disaster struck. The government launched a large-scale investigation due to the increasing number of missing people. This made the sponsors worried. They immediately decided to withdraw their funding from the project. In order to continue pursuing this project, the professor secretly returned to Korea. Although the experiment had ended on paper, the professor never gave up. He also had people follow Siwon. This surprised Siwon. It turned out that the assistant was the professor's subordinate. He followed Siwon's every move. He sent all new discoveries in Siwon's research to the professor. Thanks to that, he was able to speed up the project. Siwon could not have expected that the person he trusted the most was the one who betrayed him from the very beginning. However, even the assistant did not expect that Siwon was such a cold person. After his son's death, Siwon focused on his research. He showed no signs of grief. Even when his wife was in an accident, he remained calm. Siwon once said that his wife had seen his son. This made the assistant feel guilty, until a man came to see the assistant. That person was Detective Kang Mu. Because he wanted to investigate Siwon, but he introduced himself as an employee of a life insurance company. However, the assistant understood that Siwon was not interested in insurance, so he reported the situation to the secretary. A few days later, the news reported Kang Mu's accident. Only then did the assistant realize that he was the indirect cause of Kang Mu's death. Then the assistant himself took Southeast Won to the place where Kang Mu's body was kept. He wanted Siwon to find evidence in Kang Mu's head. The female inspector was surprised when she heard the assistant's testimony. However, that evidence was still not enough. Suddenly, the assistant remembered a place that could help the female inspector find the mastermind. The whole plan served only one purpose of the professor. He wanted to achieve immortality. A crazy idea that surprised Siwon, but the professor believed that it was possible, especially when Siwon was able to synchronize the human brain. He wanted to transfer his consciousness to Siwon's son. What he needed was the body and brain with a special structure of Siwon's son. Siwon became angry at this crazy plan. He rushed to grab the professor's neck and asked where his son was. At this moment, the secretary returned. He injected Siwon with a drug that made him unconscious. The professor sarcastically said that Siwon was a good kid. He didn't have much time left, so he decided to conduct the experiment tomorrow. The sky was dark. When Siwon woke up, he couldn't find the professor anywhere. He tried to go out to the living room to check, but they had disappeared without leaving any trace. Siwon sat alone in the living room with his head in his hands. If he couldn't find his son today, the child would disappear forever. Kang Mu suddenly appeared and comforted Siwon. Kang Mu suggested that Siwon should review his wife's memories again. At this moment, his wife's memories appeared. He realized that there was a clue in her deepest memories. To ensure his safety, he needed the help of his assistant. At the same time, the female inspector went to the debt collection office. This was where the assassins received their mission. The female inspector went inside and met the owner of the office, but he covered for the assassin to escape. Her teammates shouted for the female inspector to chase after the car that had just left. The 2 drivers followed the killer, and they chased him to a dark mountain road. When they reached the intersection, the female inspector lost track of the killer. She ordered the police to quickly block off the nearby roads. Then she went to look for the killer herself. The police quickly found the car he left behind, but the killer had disappeared without a trace. While wandering on the hill, he saw a rest stop. The killer reported everything to the secretary. Then he continued to hide. The female inspector took the assistant back to the station. At that moment, Siwon called. He wanted to ask the assistant to help him, The assistant burst into tears and apologized to Sewon for what he had done. However, Sewon did not have time to listen. He just needed the assistant to ensure his safety during the brain synchronization process. At the same time, the killer went to meet the person the secretary had arranged. He needed to escape the police. The killer left. The restaurant staff recognized him on the wanted poster. The assassin followed the guide to a parking lot. As soon as the guide opened the trunk, he carefully observed the inside. At this moment, the guide pulled out a knife and attacked from behind, but the assassin was alert. He quickly knocked down the guide and stabbed him to death. Inside the trunk, two other men pulled out knives and rushed to attack the assassin. He calmly picked up the guide's knife, then he rushed straight into the trunk to attack the other two. The assassins inside were no match for him. They were quickly dealt with by the assassin. This was the person the secretary had sent. The secretary wanted to eliminate the assassin to cover up the clues. When the female inspector arrived, only bloodstains remained at the scene. Today was the last day Sewon could save his son, so he tried to synchronize his brain with his wife. With the help of his assistant, Sewon entered the subconscious world. He saw his wife waiting for him at a fancy restaurant. He quickly walked towards his wife. It had been a long time since he had talked to her. She felt that he was acting strangely, but there was not much time left. Sewon had something to tell his wife. He explained that he was reaching out to her through his subconscious while she was in a coma. This made his wife feel incredulous. She could not accept this fact. Sewon told her the reason for coming here was that he wanted to save their son. His wife became upset. At that moment, Yuki appeared. Yuki was annoyed when he saw Sewon being rude to his wife. After a few words, Sewon gradually lost his patience. Sewon pushed Yuki down. His wife screamed and immediately ran away. Sewon chased her to a room. When he opened the door, he saw an endless beach. He screamed when he saw his wife standing in the middle of the raging waves. Suddenly, everything around him changed. They returned to the old house. His wife's mind gradually understood what he said. He explained to her that their son was missing. She then tried to do something crazy, but failed. She thought that she would never do such a crazy thing. She insisted that she would never leave her husband and son alone. Sewon hugged his wife tightly to calm her down. He asked her if she remembered where their son was. She tried to remember, but she couldn't remember anything. He convinced his wife to remember the last time she saw her son. The scene began to change. The wife was now in a laboratory. She was crying in pain and trying to find her son. Sewon told his wife to take a deep breath. Suddenly, his wife had a crazy idea. He could only see the memories of the dead, while his wife was still in a coma. Before he could understand what was happening, the scene changed again. He found himself standing on top of a tall building. Meanwhile, his wife was walking step by step outside the railing. Just as his wife was about to jump down, he ran over and grabbed her hand. He refused to let go of her. However, his wife wanted to save their son, so she sacrificed herself. She wanted him to promise that he would find their son. Despite his screams, his wife finally freed herself. He woke up in pain. He immediately performed CPR on his wife, but his wife showed no signs of life. The assistant stopped Sewon in pain, so Sewon lost her forever. He sat motionless beside his wife. Suddenly, Kangmu appeared and said that there was a way for Sewon to keep his wife by his side forever. At this moment, Sewon remembered that the day he performed the brain sync experiment with Kangmu, he had touched the boundary between life and death. Sewon wanted to be able to talk to his wife, so he decided to stop his heart. The assistant tried to stop him. However, this was the only way Sewon could save his wife and child, so he convinced the assistant to help him. Under Sewon's determined eyes, the assistant finally agreed to help. He prepared an ice bath to lower Sewon's body temperature to the lowest level. Then he injected medicine to slow down Sewon's heart rate. Sewon gradually fell into a coma. He saw all of his wife's memories. When his wife took their child to the research room, she secretly looked at the doctor's computer file. She discovered the underground organization headed by the professor. Because she felt something was wrong, she copied all the data to a memory card. Then she went to a mysterious research room. At that moment, she saw her son being taken away by someone. She started screaming violently. The female doctor felt that she could no longer control the mother, so she opened the door for the mother to check inside. The child that the mother saw was not her son. There were many other children in the research room. All of them had autism spectrum. After leaving the research room, Sewon's wife quickly returned home. She immediately called her husband, but he did not answer. To check the information on the memory card, she turned on the computer. At this moment, the doorbell rang. His wife felt that something was wrong. The person outside said that he was an employee of the research room and that he was here to give her medicine. As soon as she finished taking the medicine and was about to close the door, the secretary rushed in and restrained her. Then he stuffed a bunch of medicine into her mouth. She tried to fight back, causing the secretary to be injured. She took the opportunity to throw the memory card card under the cabinet. The secretary saw that she was no longer conscious, so he started to create a fake scene. Back to reality. The heart monitor started to beep violently. The assistant hurriedly woke Sewon up. He lifted Sewon up and performed CPR. After many attempts, Sewon finally escaped death. He painfully called his wife's name, but his wife, who was lying on the bed next to him, had disappeared. Sewon looked out the window and was surprised to see his wife smiling contentedly, but it was just an illusion that he imagined. His wife was still lying on the hospital bed. Now he had found the most important evidence. Then Sewon and the assistant tried to move the cabinet. It was exactly as Sewon saw. Under the cabinet was a memory card. Inside the memory card were documents related to the professor's underground organization. He had many research labs both domestically and internationally. After Sewon investigated these labs, he contacted the female inspector. He knew that they needed a large, deserted space, and especially a strong power source to conduct the experiments. After narrowing down the scope, the female inspector found 3 locations. However, all of those locations were closed. There was not much time left, so Sewon would go check that area first. After getting the exact address, Sewon drove to a port near the border. There, the professor and his subordinates were preparing for the crazy experiment. They started to attach a brain synchronization device to the professor's head. Outside, the female inspector asked Sewon if he knew how to use a gun, but he had never touched one. The assistant behind said that he had used a gun before. After the 3 people equipped themselves with weapons, they began to break into the research center. Sewon discovered that the door was unlocked. The female inspector carefully opened the door and walked in. Inside, all the guards were killed. Sewon realized that someone had arrived here before them, so they quickly went to the lab. On the way, Sewon saw flickering lights. This proved that the experiment had begun. When the energy reached the maximum level, the transfer process would end. They did not have much time left. At the same time, the secretary discovered the abnormality. As soon as he turned around, the assassin pointed a gun at his head. The assassin came here because he was assassinated by the secretary's subordinates. The secretary wanted to negotiate again, but the assassin refused. He had a new plan. The secretary took the stick and then attacked the assassin. However, the secretary was no match for the assassin. He was quickly stabbed by the assassin. Just as the assassin was about to kill the secretary, the female inspector rushed in to stop him. The assassin immediately fired at the female inspector, then shot the secretary down and fled. The female inspector ordered Sewon to save his son. She would chase after the assassin. A fierce gunfight broke out. The female inspector shot the assassin once, but he quickly ran away. He picked up the axe nearby and waited for the female inspector to come. As soon as she got into position, he rushed forward and slashed at her. Luckily, the female inspector quickly dodged. The assassin attacked her frantically. Each axe blow carried terrifying power. The female inspector tried to shoot at the boar assassin, but under his powerful attack, each bullet she fired was deflected. When the female inspector was cornered, she shot through the steam pipe. While the assassin lost his balance, the female inspector kicked him into a corner. She raised her gun to avenge her teammate, but unfortunately, the gun ran out of bullets at the right time. The assassin laughed and picked up the axe, but he didn't expect that the place he was standing was a fan cage. The cold female inspector pressed the button to lock the cage door. While the killer was frantically breaking the iron fence, the female inspector pressed the button to activate the giant fan. He was sucked into the fan by the strong suction force and died in pain. Meanwhile, Sewon and his assistant quickly ran downstairs. The female doctor and his superior were both there. The energy had reached its peak. The female doctor was happy that her mission was completed. Sewon rushed forward and pushed her down. Just as she was about to attack Sewon, the assistant shot and killed her. Then Sewon and his assistant tried to stop the female doctor's bleeding. His superior still argued that she was innocent. However, he did not want to listen. He warned her to shut up or he would deal with all of them. Then Sewon went to the front of the control room. He observed the brainwave graph of the professor and his son. He realized that the synchronization process was not over yet. Sewon decided to synchronize his brain with his son's. The assistant was surprised when he saw Sewon had such a crazy idea, but this was Sewon's way of getting the professor out. Sewon would confront him directly in the subconscious world. The assistant said that it would be like Sewon destroying himself, but Sewon believed in his ability. His brain structure was more special than normal people. He was sure that he would win to bring his son back. Then he took off the professor's device and put it on his head. He ordered the assistant to push his brainwaves to the maximum. Sewon knew that the assistant was feeling nervous, so he said that I will signal you when necessary. The machine started working. Sewon saw himself standing in the middle of a large field. In front of Sewon was the professor. He was leisurely reading the newspaper. Sewon walked over and sat next to him. The professor asked Sewon if they had met before. It turned out that this was the professor's mind. mind. They were sitting across from the old school. The professor was waiting for his son to finish school. Siwon was speechless when he realized the feelings the professor had for him before. The professor had always treated Siwon as his own son. He was always worried about Siwon. Suddenly, the professor turned to look at Siwon. Only then did the professor realize that he was Siwon. Signs of aging began to appear on the professor's body. He smiled and said that the person he was waiting for was Siwon. Siwon held the professor's hand tightly and begged for forgiveness. Because he realized this too late, he asked if the professor could do him one more favor. That was, the professor returned Siwon's son, but the professor refused and said that it was too late. Then he headed towards the white gate ahead. As soon as he stepped through that gate, everything would end. Siwon realized that the professor had changed. Siwon grabbed the professor's hand, but in this world, Siwon was no match for him. He used his subconscious power to create a strong wind that blew Siwon away. Siwon watched in amazement as the old man displayed his power. He started calling Siwon's son's name. Siwon shouted loudly for his son to run. However, the professor caught the boy. In the real world, the assistant saw Siwon's signal, so he immediately amplified his brainwaves. Back in the subconscious world, as soon as the professor opened the door, Siwon activated his power. The sky began to darken. A cold hand grabbed the professor. He was scared when he realized that the person was Siwon's wife. In the blink of an eye, he was teleported to Siwon's place. Siwon said that he would not achieve his goal because Siwon had done many experiments, and every time he was on the border between life and death. The professor was angry because he could not accept failure. Then he tried to walk step by step towards the door. However, he couldn't move a single step. As the professor got closer to the door, he was pushed back further and further until he disappeared. After everything was over, Siwon ran to find his son. He followed the boy into the school. This time, he saw his son hiding in a corner. This was just like what he did when he was a child. Siwon gently approached and called his son's name, but the child didn't respond at all. Outside, the synchronization machine started to overload. The assistant tried to wake Siwon up. If he didn't wake up, everything would explode. He was trying to get his son out of there, but the boy screamed loudly. While not knowing what to do, he sat down. Suddenly, his wife's voice rang out and advised him to let his son be in his own world, just like he had done before. The purpose was to make the boy feel safe. The wife taught him a psalm. When he heard his mother's voice, the boy calmed down and let go of his defenses. The boy walked towards his father. Siwon hugged his son tightly. He had finally kept his promise to his wife. At this moment, the world around him began to collapse. He quickly pulled his son out. He finally woke up. He quickly sat up to check the device. The machine was about to explode due to overload. The door locking system was activated. Time was running out. Siwon used his body to protect his son. A loud bang was heard. A white smoke filled the room. The assistant walked towards Siwon in surprise. He tried to shake Siwon awake. Finally, a miracle happened. Siwon slowly opened his eyes and tried to wake his son. The warm call of "Dad" healed Siwon's heart. The police finally arrived to seal off the scene. They arrested those involved to assist in the investigation. The professor was dead, and the secretary had disappeared without a trace. After everything was over, Siwon and his son visited his wife's grave. Looking at her husband and son standing in front of her grave, the woman smiled happily. Their family was able to reunite, even if it was only in Siwon's subconscious. That night, the female inspector called and informed him that she had found the secretary's hiding place. As soon as Siwon stepped out of the living room, he felt something strange. A noise came from the desk. Siwon cautiously asked who he was. From the darkness, the professor appeared with a savage smile. The movie ended here. Thank you for your attention and watching. Thank you, and see you again.